Please
She saw
reconsider.
everyone ignore the
Sending them
Alpha
out now
King's
is
mute son,
suicide.
until
We
she
need
spoke
every
to him
sword
in
within these
sign
walls if we
language.
hope to survive the night.
Its black spires cut into clouds that swirled with a chill wind, and torches flickered along the stone battlements, casting long, dancing shadows. Within the castle walls, life moved in carefully measured steps, a choreography of power, loyalty, and fear. The nobles, adorned in velvet and silver, whispered their schemes and praises, all while keeping an eye on the Alpha King, whose presence alone could still a storm. Ilara moved among them, a quiet observer in a room filled with murmurs and forced laughter. Her cloak, deep sapphire in color, brushed against the polished stone floor as she walked, her eyes scanning faces that smiled too wide or bowed too low. Though she was young, she had learned early how the court worked, the masks everyone wore, the words spoken for effect rather than truth. Yet even among these calculated gestures, there was one shadow she could not ignore. Kale sat alone. He was not tall, not strong like the guards who lined the hall or the knights who bowed before the king. His shoulders were slightly hunched, as if the weight of the castle itself pressed down on him. His hair, dark as midnight, fell across pale skin, and his eyes, strikingly clear and intense, moved constantly, observing the court yet untouched by it. Everyone ignored him as though he were a ghost. Some glanced at him with pity, others avoided him entirely. But Kale's gaze seemed to hold a storm unspoken, a quiet defiance that the courtiers either feared or could not comprehend. Ilara's heart stirred. She had heard whispers of the Alpha King's son, the mute prince who had never spoken a word. Some said he had been cursed, others believed he had simply chosen silence. Regardless, he was treated as fragile, invisible even, in the very halls where he belonged. The unfairness struck her deeply. She paused near a marble pillar, pretending to admire the intricate carvings while stealing glances at him. Kale's eyes caught hers, and for a brief moment he did not look away. It was a look full of curiosity, caution, and something else, a flicker of hope, perhaps, that no one else had dared to give him. The Alpha King's voice rang through the hall, deep and commanding, calling the assembly to attention. Nobles straightened, and conversations fell silent. Ilara, though intrigued by Kale, remembered herself and bowed politely, keeping her eyes on him as he remained seated, his hands folded neatly in his lap. The king's shadow fell across the hall, immense and commanding, yet Kale seemed untouched by it, silent but unbroken. As the evening progressed, nobles engaged in formalities, raising goblets, exchanging compliments, and maneuvering for influence. Ilara noticed the subtle way everyone skirted Kale, as though avoiding a fragile artifact. She felt a mix of anger and sadness. How could someone so alive, so aware, be treated like a nothing? Unable to restrain herself, Ilara stepped forward, her fingers brushing against her cloak nervously. She knelt a short distance from Kale, careful not to startle him. Her voice was soft, barely more than a whisper, yet she did not speak aloud. Instead, she formed her hands into shapes she had practiced in secret, signs she had learned years ago from a tutor who had been patient and kind. Kale's eyes widened in shock. No one had ever reached out to him like this. No one had ever tried to cross the invisible barrier that kept him isolated. Slowly, hesitantly, his hand moved, mimicking her signs. A smile, small and uncertain, touched his lips. It was a smile that lit a spark in the shadows, a signal that someone had seen him, truly seen him. The court continued its shallow rituals around them, unaware of the quiet connection forming in the corner. Ilara signed again, asking if he could understand. Kale nodded, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and disbelief. For the first time, the walls around him, the invisible walls that the world had built, felt fragile, breakable. Minutes passed like hours as they exchanged signs, slowly, cautiously. Kale's movements were precise, careful, yet filled with emotion. He signed his name, Kale. Ilara repeated hers, Ilara. It was a simple exchange, yet it carried the weight of recognition, of existence affirmed in the midst of indifference. The Alpha King observed the room, his gaze sweeping over nobles, advisors, and guests. He noticed Kale's slight smile and the careful movements of Alara's hands. His expression was unreadable, a mask honed from years of rule and command. No one else noticed, or dared to notice, the significance of the interaction, but the king's sharp eyes lingered on the scene. Alara felt a strange shiver run down her spine. Something in the way Kale looked at her, the intensity, the trust, the vulnerability, called to something deep within her, a part of her heart that had longed for connection in a world of whispers and false smiles. She continued signing, asking if he had been here long, and Kale responded, fingers tracing the story of years spent in silence, hidden in plain sight. They were interrupted by the clatter of armor as a guard moved through the hall. Kale's gaze flicked toward the Alpha King's throne, alert and wary. Alara sensed the sudden tension, the invisible lines of authority that could never be crossed without consequence. Yet Kale did not look afraid, only cautious, as if he had faced greater storms within the castle walls than outside them. Curiosity overcame her caution. Alara signed again, asking if he wanted to speak, to share more of himself. Kale hesitated, his hands still, his expression conflicted. Then, slowly, deliberately, he formed a small phrase, "I am forgotten." The words, though silent, struck Alara with the force of a thunderclap. She wanted to shake the world, to make the court see him, to make them understand the injustice of ignoring someone so alive, so aware. Instead, she reached out, lightly touching his hand in a gesture of solidarity. He looked down at the touch, then back into her eyes, and a tear, unspoken and silent, gleamed in the corner of his eye. A bell tolled from the tower above, calling the court to the evening meal. Alara rose, knowing the moment would be disrupted, yet determined to continue this fragile connection. She signed one last message, "I will return." Kale's fingers twitched in response, forming the simplest of signs, yet one that carried hope, "I will wait." The nobles moved toward the great dining hall, their laughter echoing through the cold stone corridors. The Alpha King remained on his throne, silent, observing. Kale remained in his corner, but his posture was different now, not slumped, not invisible. There was a subtle strength, a quiet defiance, and Alara saw it clearly. As she followed the procession of guests, Alara's mind was alive with thoughts of Kale. She thought of the stories he might tell if the world listened, the courage hidden behind his silence, the depth of his thoughts unspoken. And above all, she felt a pull, a quiet, insistent call that would not allow her to leave him behind. Outside the castle walls, the night deepened, and the wind carried whispers of ancient secrets. The jagged cliffs were silhouetted against a silver moon, and stars shimmered like scattered jewels. Somewhere in the distance, the castle gates creaked as if echoing the tension within. Alara knew that her life, and perhaps Kale's, was on the cusp of change. Something had shifted in the silent corner of the court, a spark ignited that could not be easily extinguished. And in that silence, in that quiet understanding between two souls, a story began, a story of courage, of unspoken love, and of breaking the barriers that the world had built around a boy who had been forgotten. The night held its breath as Alara left the hall, her heart racing. She had spoken to the silent prince, and he had responded. Something deep within both of them stirred, a promise, a hope, and a bond that neither could ignore. Cliffhanger, somewhere in the shadows of the castle, unseen eyes watched their exchange. Not all were pleased by this connection. A subtle shift of power had begun, and the first threads of intrigue and danger were quietly weaving themselves around Kale and Alara. Their quiet rebellion, their unspoken understanding, had already begun to stir the winds of the castle's secrets. The morning sun barely touched the towers of Ashenhold, yet its pale light revealed every shadow in the stone halls. Courtiers hurried through corridors, their polished boots echoing, papers and letters in hand, and the scent of spiced tea and burning torches mingling in the air. Alara moved carefully, her cloak wrapped tightly around her. Though the castle felt familiar after last night, today it held a different weight, a tension that hummed beneath the stone walls, like the whisper of a storm waiting to break. Her heart had not stopped thinking of Kale since the night before. The memory of his eyes, the quiet intensity, the flicker of hope at her first sign, lingered in her mind. She had never met anyone like him, and she knew that she could not let him remain hidden, ignored by everyone, not when he was so alive, so capable of thought and feeling. Alara reached the corner where Kale often sat. She paused, her hand brushing against the cold stone, and smiled softly. Today he was already there, seated on the floor beside the carved fountain, his gaze focused on the water but alert to every sound. He had changed since last night. There was a confidence in the way he held himself, small but noticeable, as if a single spark could ignite the rest of his hidden strength. She knelt carefully beside him, forming her hands into the first words of greeting. "Good morning." Kale's eyes brightened and he responded in the same silent rhythm, signing good morning. A tiny smile curved his lips, and for a moment the world outside, the bustling castle, the whispers of nobles, the shadow of the Alpha King, disappeared. Alara signed slowly, asking if he had slept well. Kale paused, thinking carefully, then signed, "Not well. Dreams of walls and chains." Her heart ached at his words. He spoke of a fear she could not touch, a prison that had been around him since birth, or perhaps even longer. Yet in his eyes she saw resilience. He did not ask for pity, he asked only to be understood. The morning passed in quiet conversation, their hands weaving stories through signs. Alara discovered that Kale had a mind sharp as a blade. He asked questions about the kingdom, about the court, about the strange rituals and ceremonies. Each word he signed revealed intelligence, insight, and a curiosity that had no outlet because no one had ever listened. "You know more than most nobles here," she signed, smiling. "Why do they ignore you?" Kale's fingers trembled slightly. He signed back slowly, deliberately. "They fear what they cannot control." Alara's brows knitted. "But you are not dangerous." He paused, then signed with careful precision. "Silence is dangerous. Power ignores it until it wakes." She felt a shiver run through her. Kale spoke not with words but with truth. His silence was not weakness. It was a shield, a weapon, a form of quiet resistance. She understood then that the boy everyone called invisible was far stronger than anyone realized. By mid-morning, the castle had grown alive with rumors. Nobles whispered about the Alpha King's plans, his new edicts, and the strange appearance of a young noblewoman spending time with his son. Some glanced curiously toward the corner where Kale sat, but they quickly turned away, uncomfortable in the face of what they could not control or understand. Alara noticed their glances and felt a surge of defiance. She signed to Kale, "Do not fear them." Kale looked at her, then at the passing nobles, and his lips twitched in a smile. "I do not fear," he signed back. "I only wait." Alara realized the depth of his patience. Kale had waited years for someone to see him, to reach beyond his silence, and now she had. Their bond was growing, unspoken yet profound, a secret thread in the vast, oppressive tapestry of the castle. As they spoke, a sudden commotion drew their attention. A group of courtiers hurried past, muttering about a meeting with the Alpha King. Alara instinctively knew this was no ordinary gathering. The king's voice, when it carried through the halls, was heavy with command. Even the guards seemed to straighten, their movements sharp, like shadows stiffened by fear. Kale's eyes followed the commotion with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Alara signed quickly, "Do you want to see?" He hesitated, then nodded. Together, they moved closer to a balcony that overlooked the great hall. From their vantage point, they could see the Alpha King seated on his throne, his black robes flowing like smoke, his presence commanding complete attention. Nobles knelt before him, their faces masks of loyalty, though their eyes flickered with subtle fear. The king's gaze swept the hall, lingering briefly on Kale. Alara's heart skipped a beat. She noticed a shadow cross Kale's face, a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. Something unspoken passed between father and son, a tension that neither spoke aloud but both felt deeply. Kale signed quickly to her. He watches. He questions. Alara nodded, her own fingers moving in a silent rhythm. We must be careful. The king's voice rang out, low and authoritative, issuing commands about the kingdom's defenses and laws. Kale's fingers moved restlessly as he watched, his eyes tracking every motion, every word, storing it all. Alara realized then that Kale's silence had not limited him. It had sharpened him, made him more observant, more attuned to the nuances of power and command. After the meeting, Alara led Kale to a quieter part of the castle, a library with high, arched windows that let in the pale light of the morning sun. Dust motes danced in the beams of light, and the scent of old parchment and leather filled the air. Kale's eyes widened at the sight of the books, some so old the pages crumbled at the touch. He signed slowly, tracing the edges of the shelves. Knowledge, I have waited for this. Alara smiled. Then let us read together. For hours they explored the tomes, signing back and forth, sharing discoveries and theories. Kale's hands moved gracefully, each sign carrying thought and feeling. Alara learned of his keen mind, his ability to connect details and see patterns that others missed. She realized that he was more than the silent son of the Alpha King. He was a strategist, a thinker, someone capable of shaping the future if only he were given the chance. As the sun began to dip low in the sky, casting long shadows across the library floor, Alara's thoughts turned to the whispers she had heard about the family curse. The Alpha King's line, it was said, had been touched by a strange magic long ago, a curse that silenced the heirs until some unknown redemption was found. No one spoke of it openly, but the tension in the castle, the way Kale had been ignored, all hinted at truths hidden beneath layers of fear and tradition. Alara signed cautiously. Do you know why you are silent? Kale's eyes darkened slightly and he signed in response. I know pieces. Pieces of shadow, pieces of chains. I do not yet understand the whole. Her heart ached for him. Here was a boy burdened not only by the expectations of a kingdom, but by a silence he had not chosen, a cage built by forces older than anyone alive. And yet, he faced it with patience, courage, and an unspoken determination that left her in awe. They were so absorbed in their shared discoveries that they did not notice the quiet footsteps approaching. A shadow fell across the library floor, tall and imposing. Alara glanced up to see one of the king's advisors, a thin man with sharp eyes and a tongue sharper still, standing in the doorway. His gaze fell on Kale and then on Alara. He frowned, suspicion written across his face. Alara's fingers stilled, and Kale tensed, his body coiled like a spring ready to react. The advisor's eyes narrowed as he observed their silent conversation, the signing that no one else understood. You spend too much time with him, the advisor said softly, though his words carried enough weight to make Alara's pulse quicken. He is the prince, yes, but he is not like the rest. Be cautious. Alara's fingers moved quickly, signing to Kale. He does not understand us. Do not worry. Kale's hands relaxed slightly, but his eyes remained wary. He signed back. I have waited longer than this. I can wait a little more. The advisor's eyes lingered for a moment longer, then he nodded, satisfied perhaps, or unwilling to challenge the king's daughter. He left as quietly as he had come, leaving Alara and Kale alone once more. Even in the quiet, Alara felt the weight of what had just occurred. Their bond was growing, yes, but so too was the scrutiny. The world would not allow Kale to remain invisible forever, and she knew the risks. Yet the pull between them, silent but undeniable, was stronger than fear. As twilight fell over Ashenhold, the castle seemed to breathe around them, ancient stones holding centuries of secrets and power. Alara and Kale returned to the corner of the fountain, hands moving in rapid, eager conversation. Their shared knowledge of the castle, of its politics and mysteries, was forming the beginning of a plan, a way to understand the curse, perhaps even to challenge it, though neither knew exactly how. Cliffhanger: just as the last light of day faded from the library windows, a sudden sound echoed in the halls, a faint, deliberate tapping. Kale froze, his eyes wide, and signed quickly to Alara. Someone is watching. They know. The castle, which had seemed so quiet, now felt alive with unseen eyes. The first true threat to their fragile connection had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. The castle of Ashenhold held its breath. Shadows lengthened across the stone walls as night fell, and the faint flicker of torches cast wavering light across the corridors. In every corner, secrets moved like whispers, slipping past the eyes of the unwary. Alara walked carefully, her cloak brushing the floor, every sense alert. Kale followed, silent but observant, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The sound that had startled them in the library still echoed faintly in their minds. Someone in the castle had been watching, observing their connection. It was not merely curiosity, it had the weight of purpose behind it. And Alara knew that curiosity in Ashenhold often carried danger. They reached the hidden garden behind the northern tower, a secret place few knew existed. The scent of night-blooming flowers filled the air, sweet and sharp. Stone benches were scattered among overgrown vines, and a small fountain trickled quietly in the center. Here at least they were safe from the eyes that haunted the main halls. Kale sank to the stone floor, fingers tracing patterns on the ground as he signed to Alara. "We are no longer alone. Someone knows." Alara nodded, her hands moving quickly to respond. "We will be careful. But we cannot stop discovering, Kale. We cannot let fear bind us." He looked at her, eyes wide and thoughtful. He signed slowly, as if each word weighed heavily. "I have waited years for understanding. I cannot return to silence willingly." Alara reached out, lightly touching his hand. "Then we face it together." Their bond had grown stronger since their first encounter. Every glance, every gesture, every shared thought deepened the unspoken connection between them. And yet, with that growth came the subtle burden of danger. They both knew that the world outside this hidden garden did not understand Kale. They did not understand him, and they feared what they could not control. The next morning, the castle was alive with unusual activity. Guards moved quickly, whispering in tense voices. Courtiers scurried through the halls, their eyes sharp and suspicious. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by fear and uncertainty. Alara and Kale remained cautious, observing from a distance. Kale's eyes, sharp as ever, tracked every movement. He signed to Alara, "Something is coming." Not just words or whispers, something greater. Alara frowned. "A plot." Kale shook his head, signing slowly, "Not yet, but shadows gather. The castle hides more than walls and stone." Her heart quickened. She had begun to suspect that the family curse extended beyond Kale's silence. There were whispers of old magic, of powers that moved quietly but with devastating force. And now, it seemed, those powers were stirring. Later that day, Alara found herself in the library again, her eyes scanning ancient tomes. Kale sat nearby, hands moving quickly as he signed questions and observations. One book, older than any they had yet seen, caught her attention. Its pages were brittle, edges darkened with age, and the ink had faded to a soft gray. The words spoke of an old curse, a shadow that haunted the line of the Alpha King. Alara's fingers trembled slightly as she signed to Kale. "This book, it speaks of your family, of the silence." Kale leaned closer, eyes wide as he traced the pages with his fingers. He signed slowly, carefully. "The curse, it is older than the castle, older than our line. It waits for redemption, or for ruin." Alara nodded, her mind racing. "Then we must find the redemption, or it will never end." Kale's hands moved in careful, deliberate signs. Redemption is a choice. But who will choose? The one in silence or the one in power? Before she could respond, a sudden sound interrupted them. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, and coming closer. Both of them froze, eyes meeting with silent understanding. They were not alone. From the shadowed doorway, a figure stepped into the library, a tall, thin man with sharp eyes and a face that seemed carved from stone. He was one of the king's trusted advisors, known for his cunning and suspicion. His gaze fell immediately on Kale, then on Alara. "You spend too much time together," he said, his voice low but carrying the weight of authority. "Do you not understand the danger?" Alara's hands moved quickly, forming words with careful precision. "We understand, but we cannot ignore him. He is not fragile, he is capable." The advisor's eyes narrowed. He signed no reply. He could not. He was not learned in the language of the silent prince. Instead, he left, his presence lingering like a shadow, a warning without words. Kale exhaled slowly, signing to her, "He watches, always. The castle holds more eyes than stones." Alara nodded. "Then we must be smarter, quieter, but still we continue." That evening they returned to the hidden garden. The sky was painted in deep shades of purple and crimson, the last light of day bleeding across the horizon. Here, they were free from prying eyes, free to think and plan. Kale's hands moved slowly as he signed. "I do not want only to survive, I want to understand. I want to break the silence, not live trapped by it." Alara's hands shook slightly as she signed back. "Then we find the truth. Together, we will not let fear rule us." The bond between them was no longer merely curiosity or compassion. It had grown into something deeper: trust, understanding, and the stirrings of love, though neither dared to name it. It was a connection that needed no words, only presence and attention. Days passed, each filled with study, quiet observation, and whispered signs. Kale and Alara pored over old maps of the castle, hidden chambers, and forgotten libraries. They discovered passages no one else knew about and books that spoke of old magic, of curses tied to bloodlines, and of the power of understanding and choice. One afternoon, while exploring a small, neglected chamber beneath the castle, Kale stopped suddenly. His fingers pointed to the wall where faint markings etched into the stone glimmered in the torchlight. Alara leaned closer. "Ancient," she signed, tracing the lines carefully. "What does it mean?" Kale's hands moved deliberately, signing the interpretation, a warning, a path. "Redemption lies here, or ruin if ignored." Her heart pounded. This was more than a clue, it was a key. Something hidden beneath the castle, something tied to the curse, waiting to be discovered. And yet the knowledge came with danger. The castle had many secrets, some best left untouched, and curiosity often drew the wrong kind of attention. That night, they returned to their usual corner in the garden. The moon hung low, silver and cold, casting its light across the stones. The castle seemed alive with whispers, as if the walls themselves spoke of their investigation. Kale signed quietly, almost to himself. "The curse is patient. It waits. It watches. It punishes weakness." Alara's fingers trembled slightly as she signed back. "We are not weak. And we will not be afraid." As they spoke, a sudden noise shattered the calm. A stone fell from the battlements above, striking the ground with a sharp crack. They jumped, eyes scanning the shadows. Someone was testing them, watching them, sending a warning. Kale signed quickly. "They know we search. They will not stop." Alara took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "Then we must be ready. We continue no matter the danger." The night stretched long, filled with shadows and whispered threats. Yet in the midst of fear and uncertainty, a bond had formed stronger than any danger. Alara and Kale understood each other in ways no one else could. Their trust, their courage, and their quiet love became a light in the dark corridors of Ashenhold. Cliffhanger. Just as dawn approached, a faint, chilling wind swept through the hidden garden. Kale froze, eyes wide. He signed quickly to Alara. "Not all shadows are from men. Something ancient stirs beneath the castle. We are no longer merely watched. We are tested. The castle, with all its secrets, had begun to awaken. And for Kale and Alara, the journey into darkness, magic, and unspoken truths was only beginning. The dawn broke over Ashenhold, pale and fragile, as if even the sun hesitated before spilling its light on the castle. The halls were quiet, but tension lingered, thick as morning mist. Alara moved swiftly, her cloak brushing the cold stone floors, and Kale followed, his eyes alert to every shadow. They had learned to trust the silence of the castle, but silence was no longer a safe companion. Since their discovery of the hidden markings, Kale had grown restless. His mind churned with questions, his hands constantly moving in signs as if the world had finally given him a language to match his thoughts. Alara matched him, her fingers quick and deliberate, forming sentences and ideas that carried hope, courage, and the spark of rebellion. The markings, Kale signed, tracing invisible lines in the air. They speak of a path, but also of a choice, redemption or ruin. Only one can be chosen. Alara nodded, understanding the gravity. The curse that had haunted his line was no mere shadow of superstition. It was a test, a trial of courage, understanding, and wisdom. They could not ignore it. And yet the castle was not kind to those who pursued knowledge the world preferred hidden. Their quiet plan was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Kale's eyes flicked toward the corridor. Alara's hands moved quickly. Someone comes. Be ready. It was the Alpha King himself, tall, dark, and commanding, his presence heavy as a storm. Kale straightened, but his gaze did not falter. The king's eyes, sharp and unreadable, assessed the pair. Alara felt the weight of his scrutiny pressing down like the stones above them. "You spend your days together," the king said, his voice low, resonant, and full of authority. "Exploring corners of the castle meant for no one. Do you understand the danger?" Alara's hands moved swiftly. "Yes, father, but we cannot leave him ignored. He is more capable than anyone knows." The king's eyes narrowed, searching Kale's face. For a moment the silent son met his father's gaze unflinchingly. Kale signed slowly, "I do not seek trouble. I seek understanding." The Alpha King's lips pressed into a thin line. No words came, but his eyes softened just slightly, a flicker of recognition passing through. Perhaps he had never seen his son truly. Perhaps he had only seen what fear and expectation had built in his own mind. "You walk a dangerous path," the king said finally, turning away. "I will watch. Do not let curiosity lead you to ruin." Once the king left, Alara exhaled slowly. Kale signed, "Even the walls listen, even the stones whisper. We must be cautious." "Yes," Alara signed back, determination in her eyes, "but caution will not stop us. We will face this together." That evening, they returned to the hidden chamber beneath the castle. The markings on the wall glimmered faintly in the torchlight, as if alive. Kale traced them with careful hands, reading the patterns, absorbing the message that had waited centuries. "Alara," he signed slowly, almost reverently, "this curse, it is tied to the line of kings. Silence is the test. Understanding is the key. Those who ignore the bond of trust will fail." Alara nodded, understanding the unspoken weight. The curse was not merely magic, it was a reflection of the failures and fears of generations. Kale's silence was both the prison and the weapon. If he could master it, understand it, he could break the hold of the shadows over his family. Suddenly, the chamber grew cold. A whisper moved through the air, faint and chilling, as if the walls themselves had begun to speak. Kale's eyes widened and he signed quickly. "Not all tests are made by men. The shadows move." Alara's heart quickened. She reached for his hand. "We face it together, no matter what." A wind rose in the chamber, though no doors or windows had opened. The torchlight flickered violently, casting strange, elongated shadows. The markings on the wall pulsed with a faint, otherworldly glow. Kale's hands moved in rapid signs, reading the ancient language of his ancestors, understanding what they could not yet speak aloud. The curse, it watches, it tests, it punishes fear, he signed urgently. Only courage and trust can pass. Alara felt the pressure of the air, the weight of unseen eyes. She signed back, then we show it courage, we show it trust. Suddenly a figure appeared from the darkness of the chamber, a spectral shape, pale and shimmering, as if woven from mist and moonlight. Its presence was chilling, yet not fully malevolent. It circled Kale, its gaze intense and unblinking. Kale did not flinch. Instead, he stepped forward, hands moving in deliberate signs. I face the silence. I face the curse. I am ready. The spirit paused as if considering. Then a voice, not heard aloud but felt in the mind, whispered, "Only the bond unbroken may survive. Only trust unshaken may pass." Alara took a deep breath, her hands brushing Kale's in a gesture of solidarity. "We are together," she signed. "Nothing can break us." The spirit shimmered, its form wavering, then slowly retreated, vanishing into the shadows. The cold lifted, leaving the chamber quiet once more. Kale exhaled, a mix of relief and awe, his eyes glimmering with newfound understanding. "We have passed the first test," he signed, his fingers trembling slightly. "But the curse is patient. More challenges await." Alara nodded, determination hardening in her chest. "Then we face them one by one, together." Over the next days, their bond deepened further. Each secret meeting, each whispered conversation through signs, strengthened not only their understanding of the curse, but also their trust in each other. They explored more hidden passages of the castle, discovering rooms and libraries that had long been forgotten. Kale's mind absorbed every detail, the politics of the court, the fears of the king, the ancient magic woven through the stones. Alara guided him, learning alongside him, their hands moving in constant, intricate conversation. It was a dance of knowledge and courage, silent but powerful, a language no one else could understand. Yet the court outside was restless. Whispers grew louder, suspicion mounting. The king's advisors began to notice the pair's absence at formal events, their growing influence over each other, and their connection to the hidden secrets of the castle. Danger was gathering like a storm on the horizon. One night while returning from the hidden garden, Alara and Kale noticed shadows moving along the walls. Figures cloaked in black, silent and deliberate, observed them. Alara's fingers moved rapidly. "They are watching. We cannot be caught." Kale's eyes narrowed. "We will not run. We will confront them if needed." As they turned a corner, the shadows separated, revealing a lone figure, a messenger, pale-faced and trembling, holding a folded parchment. Kale took it cautiously, fingers tracing the seal. The message was clear and ominous. "The castle knows of your search. Cease or risk everything." Alara's heart pounded. She looked at Kale, who met her gaze without fear. He signed simply, "We cannot stop. The truth is ours to find." The weight of their legacy pressed down on them, heavy and unyielding. The curse of silence was no longer a distant threat. It was present, alive, testing them, demanding courage and trust. And through it all, the bond between them, the quiet understanding, the shared determination, was the only shield they had. Cliffhanger, that night, as the moon rose high and silver light spilled over Ashenhold, Kale and Alara sat in the hidden garden, hands intertwined, hearts pounding. From deep within the castle, a low, rumbling voice echoed, felt rather than heard, promising trials, shadows, and choices that would shape their fates. "The next test has begun, and it will not forgive hesitation." The first light of dawn barely touched Ashenhold, and yet the castle seemed alive with anticipation. The stones hummed faintly, as if they themselves waited for the events of the day. Alara and Kale moved quietly through the halls, their hands brushing occasionally, a silent promise of strength and trust. Today would be unlike any other. Today, the curse that had haunted Kale's family for generations would demand its final reckoning. They arrived at the hidden chamber once more. The markings on the walls glimmered faintly, pulsing with an otherworldly light. Kale traced them with careful fingers, his eyes shining with determination. Alara's hand rested lightly on his, steadying him, grounding him. Together they faced what had always seemed impossible. Kale signed quickly, "This is the final test. All must be shown. Courage, trust, understanding." Alara nodded, signing back, "And we face it together. No fear, no hesitation." The chamber grew cold and a strange wind swirled around them. Shadows stretched and twisted, forming shapes that seemed almost alive. The air was thick with magic, older than the castle itself. From the deepest corner of the chamber, a pale, shimmering figure emerged, a spirit, ancient and powerful, the embodiment of the curse. Its presence was chilling, yet it carried neither anger nor hatred, only judgment. The spirit's voice was not heard aloud but felt in the mind like a vibration through the bones. "He who bears silence must prove worth. Only the bond unbroken can survive. Only understanding can redeem." Kale stepped forward, hands moving in deliberate, precise signs. "I face you. I accept the trial. I am ready." Alara's fingers moved alongside his, communicating silently but powerfully. "We are together. You will not face this alone." The spirit circled them, its form shifting, sometimes translucent, sometimes solid. Kale and Alara's eyes never left each other. The room seemed to grow smaller, the shadows pressing in, testing their resolve. The magic of the curse was patient and precise, probing their hearts, their fears, their trust. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the chamber. The markings on the walls glowed brightly, revealing patterns that had been invisible before. Kale's hands moved quickly, signing his observations and understanding. Alara mirrored his signs, their connection seamless. Together they traced the hidden path within the markings, following the steps laid out by generations past. The spirit halted, hovering above them, observing. It spoke in a voice like the rustling of leaves. "Courage alone is not enough. Only trust will open the path." Kale's hands shook slightly, but he did not falter. He signed, "I trust her. She is my strength. We face this as one." Alara's fingers trembled as she signed, "And I trust you. We are not afraid." The spirit's form rippled, then slowly receded, revealing a hidden passage in the wall, faint and glowing. A chill ran through the chamber as Kale stepped forward, Alara close behind. They descended into the passage, their hands never parting. The walls were lined with ancient symbols, glowing faintly in response to their presence. At the end of the passage, they found a small, circular chamber. In its center lay a pedestal, upon which rested an old, sealed scroll. The air was heavy with magic and the sense of history was almost overwhelming. Kale approached cautiously, fingers tracing the edges of the pedestal. Alara signed, "This is it. The key. The truth." Kale nodded, carefully breaking the seal of the scroll. As he unrolled it, the words glimmered in the torchlight. They spoke of the origin of the curse, a betrayal by Kale's ancestors, a misuse of power, and the silence imposed as punishment. But they also contained the path to redemption, courage, understanding, and trust between two hearts. Kale looked at Alara, eyes wide with realization. He signed quickly, "It is not just me. The bond, the trust, that is the key. Together we break it." Alara's hands moved with determination. "Then we break it together." The chamber trembled, shadows swirling violently as if testing their resolve. The spirit reappeared, its form larger now, more imposing, as though feeding on the intensity of their courage. It reached toward them and Kale stepped forward, standing tall despite the fear that flickered in his chest. He signed rapidly, "I face you. I do not hide. I do not fear. I trust her. I accept the bond." Alara mirrored his signs, "And I trust you. We are one. Nothing can break us." A blinding light filled the chamber. The spirit shrieked, though no sound came from the throat. Its voice was a vibration through the air and bones. The shadows twisted violently, then began to unravel, dissipating into the air. The glow of the markings softened, pulsing like a heartbeat. The curse, ancient and unyielding, had begun to dissolve. Kale and Alara stood in the center of the chamber, hands tightly clasped. The warmth of trust and courage flowed through them, breaking the chains that had bound Kale for years. Silence was no longer a prison. It was a strength, a choice, a power that could not be ignored. The chamber grew calm. The spirit faded, its form dissolving into the light. Its final message lingered in their minds. The bond is true. The curse is broken. Let understanding and trust guide the line henceforth. Kale exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. He looked at Alara, eyes shining with gratitude, awe, and something deeper, love unspoken yet undeniable. He signed softly, "We did it, together." Alara smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. Yes, together. For the first time, Kale felt the castle not as a prison but as a home. The weight of centuries of fear and expectation had been lifted. His silence was no longer a mark of weakness. It was a testament to his strength, his patience, and the bond he shared with Alara. When they emerged from the hidden passage, the castle seemed transformed. The shadows were less oppressive, the halls brighter. Courtiers paused as they passed, sensing a change, though none fully understood its origin. Kale walked tall, silent but commanding, a presence that could not be ignored. Alara stayed at his side, her hand brushing his as they moved through the corridors. The Alpha King waited in the great hall. His expression was unreadable at first, but as he saw his son step forward, radiant with newfound confidence and courage, a flicker of pride softened his features. Kale approached, hands moving in deliberate signs. "I have faced the curse. I have understood. I am ready." The king nodded slowly, stepping forward. His voice, deep and resonant, broke the silence. "Kale, you have shown courage I did not know you possessed. You are no longer invisible. You are no longer silent to me, even without words." Kale's fingers trembled slightly as he signed. "I am your son. I am ready to serve, to lead, to understand." The king stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on Kale's shoulder. "You have earned your place, not through fear or silence, but through trust, courage, and understanding. You are worthy of the line of Ashenhold." Alara watched, her heart swelling. She had known all along that Kale's strength was extraordinary, but to see the Alpha King acknowledge it, to see the weight of generations lifted, was a moment of triumph unlike any other. As the day progressed, the castle celebrated quietly, not with loud proclamations or grand feasts, but with a sense of renewal. Kale walked through the halls, silent yet unshakable, recognized and respected. Alara stayed close, their hands entwined, a bond stronger than any words could express. That night in the hidden garden where their journey had begun, they sat together under the moonlight. The stars above twinkled softly, as if acknowledging the victory, the breaking of silence, and the triumph of trust and understanding. Kale signed slowly, his fingers gentle on hers. "We have done more than break the curse. We have found each other." Alara's smile was soft, radiant, "And nothing can take that from us." The castle seemed to breathe around them, ancient walls holding centuries of secrets now transformed. The shadows were no longer threatening. They were witnesses to the courage, trust, and love that had overcome them. And in the quiet of the night, Kale and Alara knew that this was only the beginning. The line of Ashenhold had a new heir, not just in name, but in spirit. The curse had been broken, the silence had become strength, and the bond between two hearts had proven more powerful than any shadow, any fear, or any ancient magic.